Mm.
So, welcome everybody to yet another episode of the INTUNE podcast with myself, Ashley Velvet Frost. And today I have a very wonderful guest of mine, Eugenie Fungaver, who is an acupuncturist, a mentor, and really encouraging people to tap into their feminine energy, into their body, and many, many other topics along the lines of spirituality and full-on embodiment. So she is really somebody who I've encountered on my path in Amsterdam as an acupuncturist and many other things. She's very, very inspiring. She's somebody that I really look up to as embodying divine feminine energy. So it's yeah, beyond a pleasure to have you here. And it looks very, very sunny where you are, my dear. So welcome. How are you?
Thank you. What a beautiful introduction. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing quite well. And as you say, it's very, very sunny here. I have the sun coming onto my skin and my hair, and it feels just really, really good to be, yeah, chatting with you in such a beautiful situation, huh?
Yeah, I'm really happy to have
Mm.
you here.
Mm.
And for the in-tune frequencies, which is normally how a lot of my podcast guests
Mhm.
come in, they normally fit under one in particular that they're really either inspiring people with or they're really embodying. And for you, it feels like there's more than just one. So normally with the alpha frequency, which is the body, this would be where
Mm.
you'd touch into like the acupuncture, maybe the practical sides of living with your
Mm.
cycle. But there's also with delta and spirituality, the energies behind living with your
Mm.
cycle and also moving along the lines of plant medicine, which I understand
Mm.
is something that's been deep on your path since you've been
Mm.
a very young teenage woman.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about, yeah, how you got here today, your story, and a little bit about like no biggie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hmm. Of course, there's a very short and long version to that story, but I feel like I'm in a place right now where, as you mentioned, the plant medicine is coming back into my life, and I feel like it's really tying everything together. So for a short-ish version of the story, I feel I've been as a always very connected to the earth, of course, as a child, as a teenager, but at some point really lost track of that and started to disconnect. Though I was riding horses my whole teenagehood, so I still remain very close to animals, very close to nature. So that was always a really big part of my life, and it just felt like it kept calling. It kept calling, it kept calling, and um, as a teenager, I had some experiences with psychedelics and mushrooms, particularly, and that's really just. It felt like it reopened that door wide open. It really like banged the door open, and suddenly all that I had thought of for my life, I wanted to go study finance and become a trader. So that's very, very far off from what I'm doing right now, obviously, and all of this just completely had to dissolve, and I was like, okay, I need to actually really follow that path, and everything was so clear. Like it's always been very, very clear for me somehow. And so after high school and all these experiences, I remember telling my Reiki teacher, because I was starting to learn about energies. I could see people auras, I could talk to the trees, talk to animals. I was like, okay, I need someone to guide me and learn a little bit. And I was learning Reiki with her, and then I remember telling her I really want to go to Peru, and I want to be learning with the shamans. Shamanism is really the path for me because it's the path of the earth, it's the path of nature, and that's something that is for me, yeah, that I'm really, really connected to. I know some people are maybe a bit more cosmic, up into the channeling from the sky and from the stars and all of this, and I mean that's beautiful, but for me my channeling really come down up. It's really like from the earth, and this path felt like, yeah, this is what I have to do. And she told me, I was 17 at the time, so she told me, well, it's maybe a little too far-fetched. If you become a shaman at 17, you might have a little bit of a hard time like creating a life, and it's not even about building a career, but just making a life, because we still live in a world where you need a home and food and all those things, and And she say, well, why don't you go for something that's a little bit more established, a little bit more well-known, a little bit more recognized? And I was like, okay, what do you have in mind? And she say, why not Chinese medicine? And in my head, something clicked. And I was like, you know what? China sounds far enough from my family, far enough from everything. I was still 17 at the time, I was still in that like phase of like, I want to go super far away. And Chinese medicine sounded great. I knew I wanted to do something with holistic healing. I wanted to help heal people. I was very focused on mental health at the time. That was really important to me. But I knew I wanted to bring something like that. And never tried acupuncture a day in my life, never been to a Chinese doctor. And I turned 18 and booked flights, went to China, spent 2 months there, completely fell in love with the country. And then, yeah, I had never been to Shanghai even. I just traveled in the countryside and was just really loving it. And then I came back to France and I was like, yeah, it's done. I have found a school in Shanghai and I'm leaving in 1 month. So I packed all my stuff and left. And yeah, I feel very lucky because I fell in love with the medicine, and that I think it was a bit, looking back, I feel like how crazy was that, to just pack everything and go and kind of put all my eggs in that basket of like being in China, which is not a very easy country to be moving to. And yeah, there had been a lot of challenges, but I felt very blessed because I fell completely in love with that medicine, and everything just starting to really make sense. The way they talked about the body, and in Chinese medicine you really take everything into account. We were mentioning the different frequency right before, and you have them all in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. And I really just love that, how they were bringing all the layers together, and the spiritual, the the emotional, the physical, everything was really brought together. And the way it was explained was making so much sense to me. It felt like it was not hard to learn because it was just making sense. And at the same time in school, we're learning Western medicine, because in China, the medicine schools are really, really full on, they're full time, and they're proper medicine schools. You get like a really proper training. You have anatomy, everything. And I remember having chemistry, all those things. And those were like, okay, that's fun, but it doesn't like match for me. And then we had all the ancient wisdom coming through, and this was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, everything was really clicking. And yeah, so really fell in love with that medicine. And I think for me, that was really the big kickstart of starting to be more in tune with my body. And as I feel it was very much still a lot of reflection that was outside of myself. Like, okay, I'm thinking about the earth, I'm thinking about the animals, I'm thinking about the bodies. I can see it's outside, but it didn't really click inside. And then I think that's a very common thing in med school, when no matter which medicine you're learning about, but you learn about different patterns and symptoms and things like that. And then every time you're like, oh my God, I have all of this. That's a bit of a thing, just because someone talks about it. And then you're like, oh, there's all of this. And so little by little, it started to connect me with my body. And that's very confronting, because you start to realize that you have no clue how to really care for your body and what's going on within. And, suddenly, like, foods that you've been eating forever, you realize, oh, actually, like, maybe they don't work so well for me, or this or that. And it was really, really fascinating to start to bring the pieces together. And I mean, that's a journey I'm still on. I don't think that's like one time it clicks and then you're like, I know everything about my body. It's really a journey. And so that was a little bit my years in China, very much a journey into discovering more my own body, my own psyche as well. I mean, I was 18 when I went there, so obviously that's a really pivotal time as well. And yeah, started to develop my spirituality more and more, and trying to figure out what spirituality meant to me, because there's so many, different ways to go about it. And I'm a bit of a let's try everything and figure out what works. So yeah, I went into a lot of different directions, and different guides, and books and practices and whatnot. And it was really a time of like, okay, trying everything, dipping my toes into everything, and trying to figure out, okay, how does it feel for me? And I think that's a time where it was not embodied yet, because it was still very much again this like outside kind of popping all around. And I actually had my first plant medicine with ayahuasca ceremony while in Shanghai, and this opened like a new door for me, and felt like, yeah, this is it. This is gonna be something big on my path. But it just kind of like stayed there. It took me a couple years to really integrate all the lessons and to be ready to drink again. And yeah, after China, I was really ready to go back to Europe. I have to say, living in Shanghai is a very overly stimulating place. I moved to China thinking of myself as an extrovert, and I came back thinking of myself as the biggest introvert ever. I love people. Gosh, I'm a people person, but I also really need some time alone. And China was a bit hard for that. You know, you get out of your house and it's constantly people. And um, but yeah, so move back. I mean, that's, again, I know it's not the shortest version, but it's still a very short version of all that happened. But decided to move back to Europe, move back to the Netherlands. And at the time, I also became a yoga teacher. So that was really starting to integrate in the body a bit more, because still all the knowledge I had, I could apply it to others, but it was still not fully in. No? It really took some time to like land. And I didn't really, now you hear everywhere about embodiments, and but at the time, no one ever told me about embodiment. Like, I didn't even know that word. um, and and it was really like, okay, I have all this knowledge, and it really felt still very much from my head, and took a moment to really land. And so yoga was really helping with this. I started teaching yoga, and so this really brought me, because when you practice yoga and suddenly you're like, I don't know, in that pose, and like this emotion pops out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, okay, it was maybe there. Or suddenly you quiet down. Like, I'm not a very much in my head person. I think my true nature is to be in my body, but I was still out of balance and more in my head, more in my masculine as well, more in my doing, going outwards. And yoga really also was really helping to bring me back into the body, into the feminine, the yin, the just being with myself. And that gave me a lot of space. And that really started to help with the integration of all the knowledge I had received in China, of like all those meridians, how do they actually feel in my body? And so to really bring those together. And then the journey continued. I opened my practice eventually in Amsterdam. I was teaching yoga less and less. I felt more called to the one-on-ones, actually, the acupuncture. And I think it's just such a beautiful work. And that's still to this day one of my favorite things to do. So opened my practice. And now for the last bit of the story, I was still actually specializing in mental health. Um, you know, I think we all go into the specialty we pick because of family or trauma or things like that. And mental health is something that's, it's always been very important to me. And I was very focused on that until something happened in my life. So that's where the cycle came through, actually. It was quite interesting because I had all this knowledge about the cycle. And I remember having this friend in my yoga teacher training who's still a really dear friend. And she's starting to tell me about all this magical thing about the menstrual cycle and being a woman and da da da. And I was like, I had quit birth control like years and years before. Like, I was already off that for forever. That's always been a big no. I did it a year and a half, and I was like, no, can't do this. So that I always had this instinct that I didn't want anything. But I had no clue about it. And I was like, yeah, I know all those things again in my head. I've learned about all those things. We had gynecology classes in school. I've learned about that. Like, I've learned how to treat people that want to have babies. I've learned how to treat the cycle, but still very disconnected from my own body, huh?
Yeah.
And I remember she was telling me about it, um, and it started to, like, move. And the long story short is that year I actually got pregnant from my ex-partner. And the decision not to go ahead with the pregnancy was a really, really difficult one, and for me felt a very, very it's a choice. I made that choice just as much, and now I've really learned to be okay with it, and be okay with it. But it took me a long time, actually. And at the time it was such a big trauma. And if you've ever been through that process, you know that it's a really, really, really painful procedure. And yeah it's a bit different for everyone, but for me it was like something really big. And now I can see it as such a blessing, because it actually, at that time, I remember thinking, okay, maybe now I won't ever be able to get pregnant again, you know, maybe that won't be an option anymore. And so I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to take the next 3 months to heal my womb, and I'm just going to focus on that, and I'm going to do only this. And I had debilitating, like very, very painful periods before that. So that was always like very, very scary every month. So I was like, oh no, not had, like, I was really hating it, you know? And then I went to my acupuncturist weekly. I went to my herbalist, was taking herbs, was really, and started to connect with my womb, to meditate. I think I tried every single womb meditation I could find on YouTube at the time. There's loads of them. I've tried them all. I was just like looking everywhere. I was like, I need to connect. And I remember the time my bleed came again for the first time. And I cried tears of joy. And I was just so grateful, because I was like, oh, it came back. It means I can actually have children again one day, you know? And oh, wait, I'm just gonna, sorry, close my WhatsApp for some reason. It was open. And I remember for the first time feeling this gratitude of, wow, like I am actually grateful for bleeding. This was such a different mindset, right? Because it's not that I was ungrateful about it before, but it was so painful. You know, it was so painful. I was like, yeah, thanks for being a woman, great, but like, I'm really not enjoying this. I was like crying in pain the whole night every month. So that was really not something fun. And I remember just crying and being like, this is so beautiful. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And this really shifted my entire relationship to my body and my entire relationship with my womb. And then it felt like suddenly my womb and I connected. And it was like, okay, we're in this together. You know, we're really creating this together. And the fun, as life will have it, suddenly when I reopened my practice, every single patient that came through came for, at first they all came for fertility. At that time, they all came because they were trying to have babies, which I found was really interesting. And then they all came for gynecological issues, or, you know, just menstrual health. And then my whole focus shifted. I was like, well, mental health is great, and I still love it, you know, but suddenly it just felt very aligned. And you know, now of course I talk a lot about the cycle, so women knows that they can come to me and find me for that. But it really was not me putting something out there and you know, being like, okay, that's my specialty, come. It was really like I healed something so deep within myself that suddenly, I don't know, you know, it's like the energetics of people picked up on it and they came to me for that. Yeah, so that was about two and something years ago, 2 years ago. And ever since, it's been a really, really deep journey into the womb, into the feminine, into really reclaiming the feminine into all of its aspects. And yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at today. So that was a very long chat. I hope that was okay, but that's the journey. Yeah.
I mean, Eugenie, I could listen to you talk for hours. Like, it takes a lot for someone to shut me up. So I'm just sat here like, oh my gosh. And I have to apologize with the dogs are barking a little bit. But
Oh, yes.
um, wow, you've touched on so many topics.
Mm,
And the first one that really comes to mind,
mm,
and you've touched on this at the end, is that when you do deeply heal something, it's not that then you're putting out a
mm,
product like, hey, this is something I learned. It's like you have
mm.
felt it and
Yeah,
healed it as well.
yeah.
So I was going to ask you, like, what does embodiment mean? But it's almost lived experience in a way. I,
Mm,
I had
yeah.
a beginning of my healing journey, a really cutting comment from my medicine woman was like, Ashley, you have all this knowledge, all these things in your mind, but it's then actually like embodying it into
Mm,
yourself. So
yeah.
is there any other way you can explain, or if somebody is in that position where they're learning a lot, but how do they
Mm,
actually embody that into their way of being?
mm. Yeah, I mean, as you say, there's really this lived experience, right? Like you cannot just decide to go for this particular trauma because you want to help people with that. It's a bit what cards you're being dealt as well, and how you how you receive that, because we have, I really believe that we have opportunity for deep embodiment every single day, and we also just have to be open, be open to take those opportunities, take those learnings. And it's a little bit like if you're learning about mindfulness and you know everything about it, but then you go around with your day and you're just like literally walking straight and not looking at what's around. It's a little bit this. It's, if you're learning about, let's say you're learning about a medicine, or you're learning about psychology or whatever, and then you just go about in your life, you have this like, okay, this is what I'm learning and it's in my head, but then you don't start and applying it. And with the womb, for example, I don't experience every single symptoms that my patient came to me for. It's not about like experiencing every single thing, but it's about really being with that energy. So you're studying psychology, okay, then how can I understand my own psyche? How can I really be connected with it? How can I really, with intention, with effort, with energy, be with it? Same with the womb, same with whatever it is you're working with. And then how can I apply that in my life? How can I let it happen in my life instead of just keeping it up there? um yeah, yeah. But something really interesting that someone told me recently, and that I really resonated with, and I think that touch upon a little bit what your medicine woman told you as well. I was discussing with someone so about the jungle actually, and going to sit in ceremony, and I want to sit with women. Actually, I am going to a Shipibo master, and the way they work with the medicine, what they say is, when you go there and you start that whole process, you go and heal within, and then with what you heal you can help others. And we cannot help people with everything. That's also just a thing we need to realize. Like, we need to help people with what feels true to us.
Yeah.
Like I could probably, but that's exactly where there's embodiment or not. It's, I could with my mind go and learn something about, I don't have something that pops into my head, but something very specific. Like, okay, I'm going to understand everything about it. Oh, actually, I've been doing this a little bit. I've been learning about, very fascinated with ADD, and so I've been reading a lot, and I've been, really thinking a lot about it. But I think that it is not my gift to help people with this, because I feel that they will be much better served by someone that experiences it on a daily basis, has been really working through it, has been feeling into it, and have found way to like balance and find more ease and find more peace. And then that person can help them. So I love learning about it. I love learning about many things, because I mean, the mind just fascinates me. And I think that's amazing. But I know a lot about it now. I can recognize it. I know, I understand a lot about it, but I'm not going to start telling people, hey, I can help you with that. Because I mean, of course, if they ask me for some things, I can guide them. But I don't feel like I'm the one that should be really the guide, because it's not embodied. It's not my experience. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that kind of
Yeah,
makes sense, but
it really
yeah.
does. You're
Yeah.
just sparking so many like downloads. I feel like just even listening to you speaking, it's like bringing so
Mm,
many ideas and things in.
mm,
So thank you also for bringing this
mm,
topics up. Something that was coming through is in particular around working with the female cycle, and
mm,
from what I've seen in my experience is like, if you're on hormonal contraception, you're suppressing the natural hormones anyway. And it's not to put a
mm,
judgment. Like we really understand and accept, like it's people's choice. It's not that we're
yeah.
judging. But for me, the thing that really was the shifting point was shifting away from the masculine energy so much in my
Mm,
day-to-day life.
mm,
I spoke the other day with a life purpose coach, and she had a burnout very similar to mine. And it's because we reflected that probably at the peak of working, I was in my feminine energy 5% of my week,
mm.
truly.
Yeah.
And that is something that then your cycle is going to be screaming at you if you're like
Mm.
I went to raves during my bleed. I would try and work like and drink loads and didn't really
Mm,
understand if I went to the gym and I was really annoyed with a workout because my body wasn't doing what I wanted because I'm
mm.
clearly like PMSing. I didn't
Yeah.
know that, and then you judge yourself and be so harsh on your own inner energy source.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about like the feminine energy? What is this? How does it influence the bleed and your
Mm,
cycle as well?
yeah. Yeah, what I want to start by saying is, and touching upon the pill a little bit, and I feel that ties in with the feminine, because that ties in with the feminine energy as in something really bigger than just in a woman's body, or but like really the feminine energy in the entire cosmos. And what I feel happen is, I mean, we all know, or a lot of tribes and societies were very matriarchal, and the feminine masculine was more balanced until up until, I don't know, 1600, something really shifted, was also religion coming really strongly and taking all that power away from women, and really become like a very strong patriarchal society and world. And that has been shown in every single thing, in the way we've been going against the earth, which is like the ultimate feminine, and this whole thing and this whole journey. And I think when women and the first feminists started to rise, things like the pill were such a blessing. They were such a blessing. But that first wave of feminism was really about, okay, let's reclaim our power and let's try to be like men. So that was really about suppressing the cycle, suppressing everything. And that allowed us, because we didn't know the alternative, right? And that allowed women to like become a part of society, to be able to become independent. And that's why I always say like this was such a blessing. Um, and that really allowed us to, yeah, and as you say, like for example, for you to be in your masculine, to be able to work, to be able to do these things. And and now what I feel is like, okay, now we realize that this gave us a lot of independence, this gave us a lot, but now we're at a point where we realize that we don't have to do it like men. And there's always this sentence around that says like, yeah, I'm a woman, I can do everything a man does, even when I'm bleeding. And I'm like, yes, but do you have to? you know that's always my answer to it. And now it's really a shift of, for me, men and women are equal, but they're not the same, they're so different. And so now we're really shifting into, okay, let's do it our way. Let's balance feminine and masculine. We don't have to be men or become like men. It doesn't work with our bodies, our systems. So yeah, a little bit on the pill. I do think that it was really this wave, and I feel for a lot of us as well, that was more the span of like a long span of society and the world. But even in the span of like a woman's lifetime, sometimes I think it can be really interesting. And I see that in a lot of women, because I work a lot with women in their 30s that have been working corporate for quite some time and are now kind of like making the shift into, okay, no, be back to my body. But it's really this realization of like, because no one is teaching us, right, from the get-go, this is your feminine power, this is your feminine wisdom, use it, go for it. No, it's kind of more of like a learning curve. And so it's like taking the pill or trying to go into the world and have this like very masculine energy, this very masculine intention behind it. And then at some point you reach a tipping point where that might look like a burnout, that might look like a disease, that might look like many things, where the body is calling you and it's like, no, no, no. And then we shift. And so I feel like this is really, yeah, it's really a journey. And I'm hoping that one day in the world, we'll have like from the get-go the balance. But yeah, I feel it's very much a curve happening.
Yeah.
And so you're asking about the feminine energy, and that is so big. I have an analogy I really like and that I share with my patients. And I think, in Chinese medicine, we have this very ancient symbol, the yin and yang. And now you kind of see it everywhere. Everyone talks about it, a yin yang, da da da. But there's so much depth into that symbol, because they really saw it as the basis principle for everything. And that's energy from the same source at different moment. It just keeps changing into one another. And and those principles are seen, you can observe them in everything, in everywhere, in everything. And so you have I don't want to call them the basics, but let's say that the most known one, the moon is yin, where the sun is yang. The earth is yin, where the sky is yang. And there's always this notion that the yin in TCM, in the body, we say the yin is the substance. So for example, the yin will be the body and the yang will be the mind. But in the body, the blood will be the yin, but the energy that makes the blood move will be the yang. So yin being the feminine and yang the masculine, right?
Mm.
And this analogy I use because we also hear a lot of talks about masculine and feminine nowadays, and it's very hot topic, and polarity and all those things, and it's really about finding that balance. And I always share, imagine you have a beautiful field. No, you have a field in front of you, you have a big field. And then you decide to throw water into that field. So water will be feminine, right? That's kind of the ultimate feminine. And you throw a bunch of water into that field. And you throw a lot, huh? But you just let it be. Then actually it might start a little, like a few flowers are going to pop, and then the water is just going to become stagnant, and it's going to become a bit this puddle of mud, and nothing's going to happen, no life will be created. So then you're like, let's overcorrect. So you're going to start to build fences, something that has a bit more structure, bringing in the masculine, right? And you start to build fences, but then you end up overcorrecting and building fences all around. And then there's so much structure that it's not flowing. It's like contraction. Like I can feel it in my body. It's like this. Ugh. And then again, there's no life created. Nothing is flourishing. It might work for a bit. Few flowers are going to pop up again, but then it becomes stagnant. It becomes non-flourishing. But if you manage to give the water just enough structure so she can flow with ease, she can really flow with so much ease, and the structure for her to go around the field, and with this perfect balance, then at the end you're going to have a very, very flourishing field with flowers everywhere and food growing and everything, because you will have found the perfect balance between this masculine and feminine. The masculine provides a container for the feminine to flourish within. And this is found in our own bodies, in our own, you can go so deep into even the cells with that, right? Like you can really, really go very, very deep. Like even the, what's around the cell, like the shell will be the masculine, and what's inside the feminine. Like you can go so micro with this. And that's amazing, and you can take it on like bigger principles. And for me, the feminine energy again has nothing to do with gender, though I do tend to agree with that. I think we all are somewhere in the spectrum, and some of us have a more feminine essence, some of us have a more masculine essence, and that can translate into being in a male body or in a female body, but it doesn't have much to do with gender. It's really, very fluid there. And for me, the feminine energy is the one that's in the body. That's the earth. That's the very nurturing, substantial, giving energy of life. And the feminine energy is this portal of life, this bringer of life. And yeah, it translates into so many things, but it's really something that's once in a position to feel safe and to flourish, is literally bringing life. And I think that's just because that's the ultimate thing. And when I mean bringing life, I don't mean bringing children into this earth. I'm not saying that this is the only feminine thing that you can do. No, bringing life also mean creating things and bringing foods, like how the earth bears her fruits. This is a very feminine action of like this abundance, this giving. Yeah. I'm gonna stop now, because otherwise I'm gonna go like all over the place with my feminine talks. But
What I
yeah.
love of this also is that also does translate into relationships sometimes. Like that is also that container, if you are like, not all relationship structures, but normally there is if there's two people, somebody is holding the masculine pole, somebody is holding the feminine pole, and that's not gender related at all.
Yeah. And I sidetrack a little bit from the cycle here, but I've been feeling lately and recently as well, with a lot of the work in ceremonies and with the plant medicine, that actually there's something so much deeper than just the cycle. And so that's why I've sidetracked a little bit of it, but I'm going to touch upon it and how I view it now. I feel like I've taken a little bit of a bird view on it somehow. But because you were asking me, okay, how can I describe you? What is it you do, and what is it you want to bring into the world? And I realized that my path is really to connect people in general and with their bodies. And that's really this feminine of the body, right? Like that's, I know I'm an earthy person. I'm earthy, I'm connected to the land. I and I think there's magic for people that are really connected at there, but like that's not me. I'm really into the earth and into this, yeah, feminine substance, the body. And I realize now that actually there's something so much bigger than just us or the individual when we connect with our bodies, because the earth, the planet we're living on, the earth, she's feminine, right? She's really this ultimate feminine. And she is a cyclical being. She has seasons. She changes constantly, and that's very much something of the feminine, right? The masculine is more this pole. Where you mentioning the different polarities, but there's really a masculine pole and the feminine flowing around it. The feminine is way more in changing constantly, and the earth is constantly changing, and that's something that's that's completely related with our bodies, and especially as female, because when you're in a female body and you're experiencing a cycle every month, you're literally going through the 4 seasons every month. You're going through this death and rebirth every single month, and that's very linked to the earth. And now I can see how my work of connecting women with their body, I felt, well, it's for them, to feel good in their bodies, and to be able to be human in this earth and to find more space, and I do believe in that. But actually I think there's something so much deeper, because when you connect to your feminine and to how it translates into your cyclical being, you cannot not connect with the earth. You cannot be disconnected from nature anymore. And this is what we need. This is really what we need at this moment. And that's why we see this rise of the feminine. Like our whole world has been so in the masculine and the unhealthy masculine, this constant strive for more, for progress, quote unquote, because what is progress really? And for more profits, and for was losing our touch and our connection to the land. And that's really the lens. I see it as our connection to the feminine. And now that more and more the feminine is rising in men and women, and we regain this connection, we reclaim actually this connection to our bodies, to our cyclical bodies, then by doing so, we cannot ignore our connection to the earth, our connection to the land. And that's when women become really powerful channels, of, yeah, reconnecting to the earth and being able to bring forth the change that we really need to see in the world, and bring more this feminine, not just in feminine as in, okay, now I'm a woman, I feel good in my body, and that's it. And that's already amazing. Like if you're there, that's amazing, to feel good in your own body, in your own skin. But it's even more like, I want to feel good with the big feminine, with the earth, with the feminine in general, with the feminine as a collective, with other women, with really bringing that, and changing rebalancing the way we do things as a planet, as an entire planet. And it's really big. And I think it starts, it all starts within, but this connection, I really feel like we're going from the masculine and the heads as a human species, not only as gender related, but we're really going from this head, from this masculine, we're going through the body back to nature, back to the earth. And this is how we'll find, I hope, harmony again. Yeah, so that's quite of a big topic, and that's why, like, I can deep dive into the cycle itself, but I feel like it actually ties in with something so much bigger. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, oh, that's something in me that is like, I know that this is the way that we're going, and there's still like, I still hold some fear of like the intensity of the masculine in this world. The suppression of the feminine is so intense. And people, I think, mistake the feminine energy as being weak. And it's like, well, no, that's just the perception the patriarchy brings of it. I mean, the feminine energy, like you say, does birth people and projects and withstand so much pain as well. That is like almost the feminine is that we hold so much pain in the process we're carrying from ancestors and in our own experience of life. And that's also the catalyst to tap into this energy as well.
Yeah.
Is there any ways that you see that people are helping to bring this balance in the world more? Like, what can people do aside from just working on their own feminine energy? Is there anything in connection that they can do as well?
Well, I mean, it's not only about working on the feminine energy, right? Because if you see people working on their masculine energy and bringing forth the healthy masculine, the balanced masculine, this by nature, by design, is respectful of the feminine, is really wants to support the feminine, like wants to, and not as a man supporting a woman, but like just in general, like I was talking with a friend recently that's like, yeah, he's very in his masculine, he's in this very healthy masculine, and he's like, yeah, I want to change the world, and the way I want to do it is like I want to bring all the structure I have, I want to bring all of the all of the knowledge I have, all of this, like very mind thing, because the mind is amazing, I'm not saying suppress the mind, I'm saying like balance it out, that's all. And it's like, yeah, and I just want to like protect the feminine as a whole, so save the earth, like literally protect nature, save the earth, bring back the wisdom from the bodies, bring back the wisdom from the matriarch, you know it's really, so there's this, it's both sided, like we really need to work together, and I feel we need to work on both masculine and feminine, and to realize that the divine union of them is really what will bring all of us to balance. So this divine union within ourselves, but this divine union within the world as well. And well, the way I see it, because that's very much my path, is really through the body. Like if you say one thing, I say through the body, because it's really like, you have everything in your head, all the way, the sky, all of this, and then you have the earth, and what's the channel in between? That's the body. And I really feel like being in tune with your body, it's as simple as that. You're really in tune with what you're eating, with the air you're breathing. You cannot shut your like awareness, or you cannot not see, for example, that you're breathing very polluted air. Like once you start really being in your body, you cannot not notice anymore. Or the food that you're eating, suddenly you're like, well, I don't want to eat this like really bad food or this or that. And I mean, we all have our moments where we can eat something a bit unhealthy, and it's fine, but it's really, and then by this process really through the body, it's like, wait, the air is so polluted. Okay, maybe the first step is like moving somewhere else, moving somewhere different. But then the second step is like, wait, maybe I want to take some action on that. Maybe that's like a calling. Okay, what can I do to help? um Same with like the food you're eating. It's like, okay, well, I noticed that actually this really not doesn't work. Fuck, it's actually really hard to find good organic, nicely grown local foods. So how can I bring that back? And I think this is really the wisdom of the feminine, of like this keeper of the body, keeper of this earth wisdom. And the feminine goes for so many things. And I do a lot of embodiment practices for, and of dancing, but it's always connecting with your body, because through all those practices, then you cannot ignore your body anymore, and then that ties in with something deeper. But the body, and then it's whatever way feels good for your body. And maybe one day it's going on a run, which has a bit of more of a young masculine energy to it, but that's, that feels good. And then another day it's like breast massage, or just like massaging your entire body. And then one day it's yoga, and one day it's just laying naked in the sun and being like, okay, I'm just gonna be. But it's landing in the body.
I love that so much, because we are so disconnected from our body nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's also our first instinct is to not move. Like there's been moments of deep depression when it's like you just want to lie in bed. And
Yeah.
I had this from my own experience. I had one friend who's an embodiment coach, and she's just like, just move something, like move like your legs or move your arm, like do something, because then the energy is moving. But there's just so much times when you want to go into like complete still mode, and that may not be in the depths of the depression. It could also be in everyday life, like we're sat at our desks, we're not wanting to really move without structure. And some people are like, oh, well, I move, I go to the gym. I'm like, but are you actually connecting to your body? Are you doing like a routine, a process of
From
these
the head.
squats, these weights? Like it's all for
Mm.
like you say, too much of the fences around the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the maybe that's a better answer to your question. But when you say like, what is it? How can you connect with your feminine? For me, there's a lot of unlearning and peeling layers. And I'm not saying that's easy for men, but I think men have to do this with their feminine as well, actually. But the feminine as an energy is really blocked very early, because when you see children, for example, they're very free. They can sing, they can dance, they can move, they touch themselves, actually. Not in a sexual way, but they're literally like, always like touching somewhere. And then we're always like, don't touch your body, that's not polite, don't do this in public. Children are very free with their food as well. They will like be with it and feel with it, and even play with it. And then you'll be like, no, we don't play with your food. No, you finish your plate, you have to do, like, we start to put cues that are not our cues. It's really like societal clues that are cues that are starting to come, and how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to move. And I will always remember in my yoga teacher training, like the lead trainer was saying something like, when a baby, they have this whole range of their voice, and they can go from like super low to super high within minutes, and that's driving parents crazy. But they have this whole range, and then at some point we become smaller and smaller. And again, that's really defenses. And like in how we talk, our tone become, of course we have a tone that we feel comfortable in, and that's ours, and that's fine, but we have so much more available to us. And same in the way we move. And from very young, the feminine of like this freedom in the body, this like connection with the body, is really like toned down. And like, there's like layers and layers put on top of it, and that translates into so many different things, on so many different levels. And connecting with the feminine and with your body, for me, is really about and peeling those layers off, and learning so much, and realizing that you get to be in your body, you are allowed to be in your body. Because for me that was not a given. Like I have this realization sometimes where I'm like, wow, like there's still those moments where it's not, I cannot pinpoint something now, but I will be in a situation, I will be with other people, I will be somewhere, whatever, and then my body will give me a cue, and I will be like overriding it, because of, well, no, that I'm not supposed to do that now, or something as simple, when you're at school and you ask to go to the bathroom and teacher says no.
Mm-hmm.
We are literally being taught to override the cues of our bodies. And for me, that's overriding the feminine constantly since so young.
And this is almost also the intuition is the feminine almost, because
Yeah.
I also know there's moments when, say, you're like with somebody and it's like maybe having a conversation, you're like, not, your mind is like, oh, this is okay, and then like your body gives a big, like, maybe you get like a big flutter in your chest,
Mm,
like this person's not safe, or this
yeah.
situation isn't
Yeah.
for me. And then you're
Yeah.
like, oh no, but it's like, it's a duty, like it's my colleague, or it's something I
Mm,
should be with
mm-hmm,
because of all the rules of society or
mm-hmm,
dynamics of relationships, whatever the
yeah.
reason is. Someone you live with, that it just, there's so many things of like, oh, it would be impolite to just leave this conversation
Mm,
now. So yeah, it's really this, yeah, how to say, distrusting the message
yeah.
it's giving us. And that,
Yeah.
I see that. I mean, you must see that also so much with clients that are coming in your acupuncture clinic, of also pain, because
Yeah.
pain is often like your body's last method of screaming at you, because you've
Yeah.
ignored the thoughts, you've ignored the little feelings. So all it
Mm,
can do is like manifest in that particular area to be like, hello. And it's
yeah.
a little hello. It's normally a big hello, like your
Yeah.
back goes, your shoulders are tense, your knees hurt,
Mm,
stomach aches, your womb hurts.
mm. Yeah, and that's one of the things I always share about the cycle is, so to very briefly dive a little bit into the cycle, you will divide it in, let's say, like there's 4 phases, but let's say 2 main phases. So you have the follicular phase, which is actually more masculine in nature, in the sense of within your body, you're creating the eggs. So you're going towards ovulation. So there's this very yin action of building the yin inside your body. But outside, you're more like outward and giving and more focused to the rest of the world. And it's a time where it's really good to socialize and be with other people, but we are usually a little bit less in tune with how we feel. And that's why we can do more, we're more in the yang, more in the action, and that's good. We need the balance. And then the luteal phase, after ovulation and between ovulation and bleeding, this luteal phase hits. And for me, that's a moment of like checking, are you aligned with yourself or not? Because if you're not aligned, it's not that something is going to happen suddenly and that's during that phase it happens. It's just you start to feel it, you notice it, because your body is like very clear. Because with all the estrogen rising and everything of pre-ovulation and ovulation, you're like, oh yeah, sure, like deep down you're here, but you're like, no, everything is fine, and it's like this outward action. But but suddenly, like that hormone drop and the progesterone, which really calms you down, starts to rise, and you start to drop in your body, and your body is giving you very clear messages, and then you're like, well, you don't want to listen. Suddenly it feels like, oh, the whole world is against me and da da da. But actually it's just it's always been this, like it's always this way. You're just noticing it now. And I know that like PMS and all of this feels like such a curse, but it's actually a blessing, because it's showing you what is working in your life and what's not. And that's, as female body, as people menstruating, that is your biggest guidance system. We are blessed with like an inner guidance system that every month is really checking in. Every month, it's not like a yearly thing, it's a every month thing. If you
Mhm.
have a regular cycle, so to say. And then if you don't, that's also something, but we have that guidance system. It's like built in. How magical is that? Like
Yeah.
literally that every month we have something that's going to tell us this is working, this is not. And I always say, of course, if your partner is annoying you a little bit more before you bleed and you feel a bit more edgy, like it doesn't mean you have to change your partner or your entire life. But if every month something comes through at the same time, every month, then that means something has to be, worked on.
Yeah.
And I had a very strong example of that when I went through quite a big breakup. I mean, that was a very peaceful breakup and on really good terms. But there's still a lot of grief, right, when you break up with someone you've been for a long time, and that was a bit over a year ago. And I remember like a clock on, I will not miss him for like the first half of my cycle, like after a few months, but and then every time on day 21 I will really, really miss him, like clockwork. Like my ovulation will have passed, I will start to like drop a little bit, and then I will really tune in with my grief. And so I took it as an opportunity. I knew like, okay, this is the time where actually I can really tune in with my grief. I'm not going to try to tune in with it before or after. This is a beautiful time. My body is giving me the space. Great. And then I was able to tune in with the grief on these days. And then, the grief really healed. Um, and and so that's what I work with patients when they come in and like, okay, I have this really intense PMS or this or that and all is happening. I'm like, well, it's not about you. You don't have to change your entire life, but can you just simply start to listen and to engage in that conversation with your body, engage in that conversation with your cycle, and see what's there, see what it's trying to tell you, because it's really trying to help you. It's working so hard for you. And instead of going against it and pushing it down constantly, can you simply listen? And that's very confronting.
Yeah.
That's very
Yeah. But we
confronting.
sometimes we don't want to hear the thing it's telling.
No,
But
no.
it may be this city is not for you, this job is not for you,
Mm,
this partner may not be for you, this
yeah,
behavior you're doing is not for you, and it's not
yeah,
on, you're not honoring yourself with it.
yeah.
It's yeah, like I know in society people often like if someone's being bitchy, they're like, oh, she's on her period. I'm like, no, sir, she's probably bleeding in 5 days' time. Like it's always like the time before, but we don't educate
Mm,
people about the cycle. I mean, it's
yeah.
my personal vendetta of every friend, partner I've ever had in my life. They are hearing the word my bleed, my cycle, like how like it's actually an amazing thing to do in relationship if your partner understands this, because then they could be like,
Mm,
where are you in your cycle? I'm like, oh, I'm in autumn. So they also,
yeah,
my partners knew this. They'd be like, hey, when's
yeah,
summer coming? And then they'd like, it's like also a way for them to
yeah.
understand and respect your
And
cycle as well.
let me tell you, most men actually really enjoy it because they get to understand you better
Mhm.
and they get to support you better. And the masculine just wants to support the feminine, so they get to provide this container that like and you don't need a man to provide this container. Again, you can provide, but it's just, in a relationship, if you're like really relating with someone, then they can really provide this, like, okay, they know it's like summer and maybe that's the time if they want to, I don't know, bring you in a picnic somewhere and do something a little impromptu, then it's not something that you want to do while you bleed. While you bleed, you want to go for the things, you want to be cozy. And so, if they want to do things with you, if they want to interact with you, like men have a 24 hours hormonal cycle. So, you know, they wake up, it's not like they're the same every single day, they have their own things, but in a physical basis, they have kind of like this very regular thing. And once they understand that we're really different, it just makes us so much more understandable, and the relating becomes so much easier.
Mm.
And that also goes with your female friends, you know, like I I always love that I know I know where so many of my friends are in their cycle. Like I have so many women's cycle in my head on a day on a daily basis, but I can tell you where my friends are,
Yeah.
you know.
My business partners, I work as a
Yeah,
three. There's three of us women together, so we also are
yeah,
like, when someone's bleeding, then it's like, You're not working for a few days. Like,
yeah,
go do what you need."
yeah, yeah.
And I remember specifically, I mean, I had a friend who I think her boyfriend had booked like a really like, it's like, yeah, I'm taking you to Paris, and like this
Mm,
weekend it's gonna be really beautiful, and it's like it's what they see in the movies that they think women want, and it is.
mm.
But she's just like, I'm about to bleed. Like
Yeah,
I don't want
not
to be
now.
a hot weekend in Paris. Like do this in 2 weeks' time or something. And it's
Mm,
that element is like, because it's that gesture is coming from so much love from the partner, but it
mm,
can't be received, and then it causes
mm.
like there's a lot of like repercussions that come from
Yeah,
the cycle not being aligned as well.
yeah. Yeah, I think that, and that's exactly this. You know, it's about learning the language of our own body, and only if we are very literate with our own body with this language, then we can also educate other on how to interact with us. And but we have to become very familiar with it.
Yeah.
And going back to the confronting thing, this, I think this is really the major problem for a lot of us, is like you have those realization, but then it's so disconnected from you know, I actually talked about this, but yeah, let's say you have the very typical, you're working corporate 9 to 5, like the very, because you know the 9 to 5 is made to fit the male cycle. It like fits really well with how their hormones are working throughout the day, not made for us. So let's say you're working this 9 to 5, then you have your after work drink, and then you're like on your computer a couple more hours. You live this like, you know, very yeah, this kind of life, so to say. And then suddenly you have this realization, like your cycle comes in, you start to tune in with your body, and then it's so out of coherence with everything in your life that it's either you feel like, okay, I if you don't have any support, if you don't know where to go, if you don't know where to start, it feels the expansion is so big that quite often it goes into and we close back. And that's where it's really difficult, and that's also why I found it so essential that we hear about this, we hear about the cycle, about the cyclical language more and more in all kinds of areas, not only in the holistic health word, but also in corporate jobs, in everywhere. The more we can hear about it, the more we can really give space for it, and the less big it's going to feel, as in, you know, this, sorry, there's just some people walking by, hey. And the less big it's going to feel, you know, because now I feel like if you tune in, sometimes the difference with what you've been taught and what's possible is so big that it's yeah, it's hard to then stay tuned in, and it becomes just this experience of like, sometimes you have this realization and then goes back. Yeah, yeah.
Fundamentally the essence of INTUNE as well, this
Mm,
with yourself and your body and the people around you. It's just I don't know, these conversations just deeply move and inspire me, because they're all interlinked. Like once all you podcast guests start hearing each
mm.
other, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, like this is all connected. It's so
Yeah,
beautiful. So I
yeah.
understand that you're on the move a little bit for the next coming months. But if somebody is listening to this and they're just like, wow, Eugenie sounds amazing, I need more of her energy in my life, how can
Mm,
people work with you or even just have contact with you, and what
mm.
kind of things are you offering at the moment?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm working a bit hybrid, online and in person. I will be in my practice in Amsterdam 10 days every month for the upcoming year, or I don't know more, but at least the upcoming year. So I'm opening my practice in Amsterdam, and that you can reach out to me through my website, for email, for my phone. And I also share a lot on my Instagram. I think that's my main social where you can find. I always share when I'm where and what I'm doing. And I also offer coaching online. I'm currently not taking a lot of coaching clients just because I am heading to the jungle and going into ceremonies myself and really taking this time to have a lot of space for myself. But I am taking one or two client at a time. I have, yeah, I think one space for February left, for example. So yeah, that's a way of working with me. And then, you know, we can always be in touch, and whenever you feel the call and whenever space opens as well. I think from this summer I will start to open a bit more space and take on a bit more people, but this time is really a time of deep dive for me as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd be so intrigued and love to have you back after your jungle experience. Once you've integrated as well, because I know that you straight away
uh,
afterwards, that's not possible. But
yeah.
whenever it feels ready and right, it would be amazing to have you back, because I really feel like this is opening a much bigger chapter as well. If it's even possible,
Yeah.
'cause you've, like, how long have we been talking for? This is like, could go for
Mm,
ages. And
yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And for having sat next to me in a wine bar and then us just
My dog had a massive crush on you and was like, I need to sit on Ashley's lap. I love that. I love that's how we met. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh. No, but thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thank you for, like, yeah, also, you know, the container you provided for me being able to share. And yeah, I think that was really beautiful, and love the space you hold. So thank you so much for that.
Really
Thank
an
you.
honor.
Mm.
Okay, well, thank you everyone else for tuning in, and we will see you all on the next episode as well.